Hey there, you guys. How's it going? In today's video, we're going to talk about 007 First Light. This is a game that took me by pretty surprise. I didn't expect how much I was going to love this game. I didn't expect exactly what I was getting into this game. I had a vague idea of what to expect. For you guys who don't know, this is 007 First Light. It's a game developed by IO Interactive. They're the same people who brought us like the Hitman franchise. Um, so I think going into this, a lot of us thought this is going to be Hitman with James Bond skin, right? It's going to be in a tuxedo, talking up girls, doing Hitman stuff, which sounded cool in of itself. With that being said, I haven't been a Hitman fan for quite a while, to be honest. So I didn't know how much I was gonna really love this James Bond game. That being said, I am somewhat of a James Bond fan. Daniel Craig is my guy. Love that era of James Bond. It's kind of what I grew up with. I grew up playing games like GoldenEye, Nightfire, etc. Like those games are games that I played and I loved. So I'm not unfamiliar with this franchise, unfamiliar with the series or anything like that, but you never really know with these IP games. You never really know exactly what you're gonna get, because a lot of times hot trash doesn't work, or oftentimes they don't understand the IP too well, and they're kind of like, botching it up a little bit, or sometimes they're just tied too in to the property where they're too scared to do something unique and different. And I feel like with 007 First Light, IO really, really took it upon themselves to create their own James Bond narrative, their own vision for what James Bond is, while paying homage to everything that James Bond has been. So with this game, you get a really, really cool, like almost over the top fan service that's very blended in. It's not too in your face. The game in of itself, presents James Bond in a very unique and different way that I don't think we're used to seeing, right? I think when you look at James Bond, you're usually, in his older era, he, knows a lot more. He's a lot more experienced. He's a lot more suave. He rarely makes mistakes, and if he does, he can think on his feet and get out of those mistakes quickly. In IO's version of 007 of James Bond, we're a very rookie, James. So rookie that we see him go through his whole training phase. We kind of see where MI6 is in his era and where it will eventually become. So overall, like, as far as what the premise of the game is, they sold me really well very quickly into this game. The way they introduce you to these characters into MI6, the way you meet M and Moneypenny, and even like your fellow trainees alongside you in the Double O program, like all of them are super cool. A lot of it is very engaging. The writing is one of those things that really sticks out in this game. It's oftentimes, you know, dialogue in games can be tricky, because you want to make sure that it's paced at a certain way where the game feels snappy, that you're moving forward, you're making progress, you're not kind of at a standstill. But you don't want it to be too simple, too cheesy, where it just comes off like, no human being would ever say that. I think the writing team in this understands how to communicate characters in a very, very, efficient way while also making it feel like a human being would say these things. There's nothing in this entire game that made me cringe or feel awkward or feel like, ooh, who would say that, right? So just as far as like the world building and what they're doing with this game, I think they really, really understand the property of James Bond, this world, this era, this character, James Bond, this era, grounded in what they want to do while still learning how to be over the top and be a little funny, be a little interesting, especially with the ways that James Bond has to think on his feet and come up with excuses why he's in a place he shouldn't be. Those are always really interactive, very fun to see. I love that they switch it up. The amount of dialogue is very dense as far as options that kind of get siphoned through, I feel like, from as you're navigating like the club floors or through the hotel rooms, you kind of overhear the chatter, and a lot of the chatter is very unique, very different. Everyone feels like they have their own life, and I think that's super important. They're not just NPCs who are waiting for you to interact with them or walk by them or whatever. They're NPCs that are living their own life in this world that James Bond is. And oftentimes, James Bond is a nuisance to kind of everybody, which is fun. It's fun to see him, run through hotel rooms he's not supposed to, or bump into people he's not supposed to, accidentally flirt with somebody's girlfriend, stuff like that I think are so cool, super situational. And from what I gathered, when I hear other people talk about their experience with the game, a lot of them approach this game very differently and ended up with different outcomes than I did. Obviously, the end result is the end result, but the fact that IO was able to make this game feel so linear while still having so many different branching paths, I think it's definitely feels like, Hitman on training wheels, because Hitman, you have a plethora of different ways to tackle situations. And in James Bond, you definitely have different ways to navigate situations. With that being said, though, a lot of it feels linear. It feels like it's on guardrails. I thought the way I played certain segments was how you have to do it. But then I found out other people just kind of, did a different path. And then once I learned that, it made the game even better for me, because now I was able to say, "Hey, the game is telling me to do this right now. But is there another way? Is there a faster way? Is there a better way?" Sometimes it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's a little clunky as far as like what you can interact with. Where I feel like Hitman, like almost everything is interactable and everything can work in some type of way. In this game, there are still set. This works if you do this, and this engages with this. Um, that makes it still interesting as far as how you choose to go about it. But it definitely makes it worth either replaying, worth trying to see, maybe there's a better way or a faster way. There's definitely different approaches that I took that I was like, I probably shouldn't have done that because it was kind of unnecessary and it kind of just like added more time, but it is what it is. And there's other times where I was able to just completely, do shortcuts. There was a certain part towards the end where they ask you to get a yoga mat. And I was like, I'm not gonna go get the yoga mat. I'm not gonna walk back down there. So then I just snuck around some type of way. But everything has its own consequences, right? For example, in the hotel room, if you don't get your press badge, now you have to kind of find different ways throughout that level to get into places that you require a press badge. It's not just the front door; it's through the back end, through the back stages, etc. Like, so it's one of those type of things where decision making is very key. Decision making is very important. How fast you can think on your feet works. Um, I do think there are a lot of standout moments in this game, from like set pieces to moments that I think I'm gonna remember for a while. And I think the thing that sets this game more apart than other games is I think they nailed the thing that most games are trying to do. I think a lot of these games are trying to do this cinematic game that feels like you're playing a movie, but oftentimes it struggles in the playing a movie part, right? And a lot of times it becomes too hand-holdy, too, on rails, where it kind of just feels like you're watching the game more so than you're playing a movie. And James Bond is one of the first games that I think I played that generally made me feel like I was playing a movie. There's a training montage segment that is literally what you would see in a movie, where you're snapping from moment to moment, scene to scene. It's cut up in a way that feels so cool. Like you're doing the training montage that you see in movies. It's insane. And, that's not the only part. There's tons of parts that feel like, hey, this is that cinematic action piece in a movie, and you're kind of just you're playing it, you're controlling it, you're kind of the director of this movie, and you're choosing what to look at, where to control the pacing on things, and it's so cool, it's so fun, it's so satisfying. The way like almost everything works is so cool, and they bring up a lot of toys to play with. There's a certain segment where you're in an airplane, and that whole airplane segment, I really love the gameplay mechanics that get tied into it. Um, there's a certain part towards the end where they give you, all the toys in the play box, and you're just going crazy with it. I do think this game crescendos in a way, not just from narrative standpoint, but from a gameplay standpoint. It builds and builds and builds on each other until you get to these grand finale moments towards every like section that felt so worthwhile, so worth all the payoff, so worth diving into the different mechanics on how to, play and hack different things. My only regret, I think, is maybe not getting a little bit more creative with some of the gadgets. I kind of stuck to the same gadgets often, just because I knew how they worked and when to use them. So I was able to kind of like kind of max that out as far as like my capabilities of it. With that being said, if I was to replay this game, I'll definitely switch out a lot of the gadgets a lot more often. I'll definitely try different paths a lot more often, which is what this game is asking you to do. This game is asking you to get creative with it. Sure, you can play the game, you know, straight to the T, as linear as possible without any kind of derailment. You can definitely do that, but you're robbing yourself of an experience that I think this game gives you the opportunity to have, and that is the opportunity to experiment and play and have fun and not try to just beeline a game. Oftentimes we just enter game and try to get to end point as quickly as we can without doing side content, etc., etc. This game is giving you all that stuff on a platter without it being a derailment. A lot of it is progressing you forward, whether it's taking a different path, lying to a different person, using a different gadget. All those type of things I think IO does really, really well in this game, as far as, again, just giving you more ways to engage with the game. And that is super cool, super fun. Overall, like, this is a game that going into it, I didn't expect to love as much. I thought I was gonna I thought I was gonna enjoy it for sure, but I didn't think I was gonna walk away thinking, "Wow, is this my game of the year? Is this the best game I played so far in 2026?" And so far, it's up there. It's in contention with a lot of the greatest games that came out in 2026 so far. I think, as far as a narrative standpoint, this game is probably one of my favorite narratives I've played so far. Not just because it's like deep or crazy. It's nothing like that. It's just, it feels so blockbuster, so bombastic. All the characters are so cool. All the moments feel like so well delivered that I feel like by the end of this game, I walked out of a movie theater, throwing away my popcorn, throwing away my soda, and just like reflecting on what I just experienced, more so than like, oh, this is a deep narrative and let's break down the characters and blah blah blah. Like, no, like, sure, these characters are pretty deep and there's a lot of twists and turns that keep you on your toes, and there's some things that are predictable and some things that aren't as predictable. And there's definitely some times where I thought the path was gonna go this way, but it ended up not. Anyways, all that being said, 007 First Light, if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. I think it's one of those games that we're going to remember for a long time. I think, as far as the, world of James Bond goes, I think this is probably my favorite James Bond story. Close to Casino Royale and Skyfall, it's like right there. But it's just really cool to kind of be with James on the ground floor from ground zero, kind of just see what makes him him. You kind of see a lot of the things that will carry on to his personality later. You see MI6 kind of being recreated into what we will see it to become. I'm very excited for a sequel to this game. Very excited to what they can do next. I want to see them go bigger, go bolder, more explosions, more lies, more disguises, etc. I want to see all of it. Anyways, I'm gonna end the video there. That's all my thoughts on 007 First Light. Again, let me know down below where you guys are at, what you guys think about it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.